It was a hot night in Las Vegas, and Mike Tyson had just participated in a charity event to help at-risk youth. Despite his fame and turbulent past, Mike always tried to use his voice and name for positive causes, and that night he felt satisfied for having made a difference. After the event, Tyson decided he deserved a moment to relax. He walked into a lively bar on the Strip, a place where celebrities and tourists mingled in search of fun. The lighting was low, the music pulsing, and the atmosphere inviting relaxation. As he sipped his drink, he noticed an elegant woman discreetly watching him from across the room. She had an enigmatic smile and a gaze that seemed to hold many secrets of the night. After a few minutes, she approached him, starting a smooth and charming conversation. The woman introduced herself as Lisa, and soon the two began talking about their lives, experiences, and the complexities of living in the spotlight. Mike, tired of the traps of fame and fake news, felt in that moment a true and genuine connection. She suggested they continue the conversation somewhere more private. Without thinking much, Mike accepted the invitation, just wanting some pleasant company and a break from the constant media attention. At that moment, the night seemed promising, full of possibilities. What Mike didn't know was that this encounter would change the course of his next hours in an unexpected and unpleasant way. Mike Tyson left the bar with Lisa, feeling a strange mix of curiosity and caution, but also a rare sense of relief after months of intense living. She led him through the vibrant lights of the Las Vegas Strip, her fingers lightly brushing his as they walked, as if they had rehearsed this encounter long ago. The walk to the hotel was short, but time seemed to slow down for Mike. He, a man accustomed to the brutality of the ring and the chaos of the spotlight, now found himself vulnerable to the subtlety of her presence. Lisa seemed to know exactly how to steer the conversation, laughing at the right moments, asking questions that made him feel heard, something that hadn't happened in his life for a long time. They entered the lobby of the luxury hotel, where the glow of chandeliers contrasted with the darkness of the night outside. Mike handed over the key at the reception, who recognized the celebrity with a restrained smile. Lisa maintained her composure, her eyes shining with a mix of professionalism and mischief. She knew what she was doing, and experience told her this night could yield much more than just temporary company. In the elevator, the silence between them was comfortable but charged with tension. Mike felt the natural anxiety of any man in that situation, mixed with the confidence of someone who had fought many battles and knew when something didn't feel quite right. But Lisa's sweet voice and gentle touch on his arm made him lower his guard, if only for a moment. When the door to the room opened, Lisa turned on a soft light, creating a cozy atmosphere. The scent of incense and scented candles filled the air. She asked Mike to sit on the plush sofa while she prepared 2 glasses of wine. The woman moved with calculated grace, her eyes fixed on him as if hypnotizing. Mike let himself go. Years of distrust, past betrayals, seemed distant at that moment. It was just him and that woman, in a space that felt isolated from the world. Lisa began telling vague stories about her life, her struggles, making Mike feel like a figure of strength and protection, exactly what he liked to be for someone. As they talked, Mike started to relax more than he should. The security and attention Lisa offered him, mixed with charm and beauty, made him feel alive, appreciated. At that moment, he wasn't a former boxing champion. He was simply a man yearning for connection. But Lisa had her own plans. With subtle movements, she began to scan the room, noting where the valuables were, the expensive watch Tyson wore on his wrist, the ring he always kept as a family keepsake, and the wallet stuffed with cash he carried for emergencies. When Mike went to the bathroom, Lisa took the chance to act. With the speed of someone skilled in quick moves, she opened the wallet, took out money and cards, grabbed the watch from the nightstand, and discreetly slipped everything into her bag. Each move was meticulous, leaving no trace, like a magic trick. When Mike returned, he sensed a slight shift in the atmosphere, an imperceptible tension, but Lisa kept smiling, her face a mask of calm. They toasted, and he thought that this night, despite the unexpected, could be just another good memory to carry. While Lisa distracted Mike with a personal question about his son, she slipped the jewelry and money into the pocket of the jacket she was wearing, a piece she had already prepared to leave without suspicion. The night wore on, and little by little, Mike realized something was wrong. When he reached for his phone to call a friend, the surprise, the bag containing his belongings was gone. A chill ran down his spine. Lisa, with a nervous smile, tried to stay calm, saying maybe he had left it somewhere else. But Mike knew better. Suspicion grew quickly. He tried to get up and look for it, but Lisa gently held him back, asking him not to do anything rash. It was a tactic to buy time. In the next moment, before he could react, Lisa stood up and walked quickly to the door, opening it and leaving without looking back. Mike Tyson stood there in the silent room, feeling for the first time in a long while the pain of betrayal. Not in the ring, where the fight is clear, but in real life, where trust can be the most fatal blow. The silence in the room was almost deafening. Mike Tyson stood still for a few seconds, staring at the half-open door through which Lisa had disappeared. His breathing quickened, and the muscle in his jaw, so used to the impacts of boxing, tensed involuntarily. Suspicion had turned into certainty. He had been robbed, deceived, used. The adrenaline he knew so well, that same rush that surged before every fight, flooding his chest like a hot, uncontrollable wave, took over his body. But this time, there was no ring, no referee, no crowd screaming. It was just him, his anger, and the trail of deceit left by a woman who had walked out of the room with everything she could carry. Mike jumped to his feet. He scanned the room. The Rolex was gone. The gold ring that had belonged to his late trainer, Cuz D'Amato, one of the few sentimental items he still kept, was missing too. His wallet? The leather folder where he kept documents, cards, and personal contacts had completely vanished. Even the diamond pendant necklace he had left by the bed had disappeared as if it had never been there. He rushed into the hallway, wearing only pants and a t-shirt, his bare feet pounding against the carpet. He looked both ways, but Lisa was gone. No trace. Like a ghost in the night. Like a professional. Damn it, he muttered to himself, clenching his fists. Tyson went down to the front desk. The staff recognized the look on his face instantly. Something had gone very wrong. "Mr. Tyson, is everything all right?" one of the employees asked, concerned. "Get security now. I've been robbed." "She stole from me," Mike said, his voice firm but controlled. He already knew that drawing attention wouldn't bring his things back. He needed to act fast, but with precision. As the hotel staff reviewed the security footage, Mike paced the lobby, trying to keep his anger in check. The betrayal hurt more than the material loss. He wasn't naive, he knew the world he lived in, but being deceived like that struck a deep blow to his pride. And to his story. Then came the footage, the exact moment. Lisa stepping out of the elevator with a calm expression, as if everything was perfectly normal. Wearing the jacket, bag on her shoulder, and even smiling at one of the staff members. No rush. No fear. The police were called. "She came in with you, Mr. Tyson?" the detective asked, taking notes. "Yes. We talked at the bar, went up to my room. And when I realized, everything was gone." "Did she give a full name? Any contact info?" "Lisa, that's what she said." But now, thinking back, it might not even be her real name. The next few hours were consumed by statements, tracking footage, cross-checking information with other hotels. The hotel staff, concerned about the reputation of the place, and of course, the weight of the name, Mike Tyson, offered all available resources. Meanwhile, Tyson returned to his room and sat on the edge of the bed. He ran his hands over his shaved head, taking a deep breath. It wasn't the first time someone had tricked him, but it was certainly one of the most subtle. He stared into space for several minutes. He thought of the young Mike, who grew up on the tough streets of Brooklyn, surrounded by violence, poverty, and survival instincts. He had learned early on not to trust anyone, yet somewhere along the way, he had let that armor fall. "I'm getting soft," he murmured. But deep down, he knew it wasn't weakness. It was exhaustion. It was the weight of a lifetime spent trying to protect himself. The doorbell rang. It was one of the security guards. "Mr. Tyson, we found a lead. A taxi dropped her off at an address about 8 blocks from here. The police are already on site." Mike simply nodded, looking at the guard with a cold expression. He didn't need to go there. Not personally. But he wanted one thing: justice, or at least a shred of dignity after being exposed like that. The news wouldn't take long to spread. Someone was bound to leak the story to the press, and within hours, the whole world would know that Mike Tyson had been conned by a prostitute. But what no one would understand, what no tabloid would ever publish, was that it wasn't just about theft. It was a cruel reminder that no matter how physically strong a man may be, the soul remains the most vulnerable target of all. The room felt smaller now. Mike Tyson was alone again, but he was no longer the same man who had walked in hours earlier. There was something different in his gaze, not just anger, but a deeper kind of resentment. It was as if, somehow, that woman had touched something he had spent years trying to bury, the old wound of broken trust. He stood up slowly, still struggling to believe the audacity of the con. He walked over to the mirror, stared at himself. There was the former heavyweight world champion, a face that had graced magazine covers and delivered legendary knockouts. But there was also the boy who'd grown up betrayed by adults, used by greedy promoters, and thrown into a life of extremes. "How could I fall for this?" he said quietly. It was more than just a financial loss. It was a hit to his pride. The symbol of invincibility so many saw in him had been taken down once again, not by a punch, but by a smile. And that hurt more than any hook to the jaw. Later that afternoon, 2 detectives returned to the hotel. "Mr. Tyson, we found the apartment where the woman was dropped off by the taxi. We checked it out, but she's no longer there. Took off before we arrived." "And the building's cameras?" "Unfortunately, they were turned off. Likely on purpose. We found belongings from other victims inside. It's a bigger operation. This isn't the first time she's done this." Tyson clenched his fists. He wanted to act. He wanted to hunt that woman down himself. The old street fury throbbed in his veins like a war drum. His primal instinct wanted to scream, destroy, chase. He knew people who could take care of this sort of thing. But something inside him held back. Instead of exploding, Tyson took a deep breath. He sat down. He was on the verge of doing what he had always done in his worst moments, retaliate. But for the first time, he didn't want to respond with violence. Something was shifting. He picked up his phone and called the therapist he had been seeing over the past few months. It was a quiet, almost embarrassed call, but a necessary one. "It happened again," he said simply, and the voice on the other end remained silent. Mike didn't need advice in that moment. He just needed to be heard. The conversation lasted only a few minutes. Just enough to keep him from sinking deeper into his rage. The therapist, wisely, asked only one question. "Do you want to be the man who reacts with anger, or the one who learns from it?" The question hit like a punch to the chest. Mike hung up and stood still for a long time. Silence filled him again, but this time without violence. He remembered a quote from Muhammad Ali, who once said, "True strength isn't in the fist, but in what you can hold back inside." That night, the media had already begun spinning headlines. Mike Tyson robbed by escort in luxury hotel. Boxing legend victim of mysterious Vegas scam. Tyson betrayed in the quiet of the night. Messages began pouring in. Some friends laughed. Others showed sympathy. But they all wanted to know the same thing. "What are you going to do now?" The answer wasn't clear yet. Later, Tyson decided to leave the hotel quietly. He threw on a cap, dark sunglasses, and slipped out through a side exit. He walked along the glowing streets of Las Vegas, blending into the crowd of strangers who had no idea that the introspective man passing among them was one of the greatest boxers of all time. He stopped in front of a closed gym where he had trained years ago. It was there that he had first felt what discipline really meant. And in that moment, he realized that the greatest fight of his life wasn't against another man in the ring. It was against his own impulses. More than recovering stolen possessions, he needed to recover control over himself. The prostitute, whose real name he still didn't know, had vanished like smoke. But what she left behind was far more than a ransacked room. She left a mark that forced him to look inward. It was no longer about revenge. It was about redemption. The sun rose behind the skyscrapers of Las Vegas, casting a golden light that slowly illuminated the asphalt still warm from the night before. Mike Tyson had been awake long before the first rays appeared. Sitting in an armchair in the corner of his hotel room, wearing a plain white t-shirt and sweatpants, he stared at the horizon through the panoramic window. There was no longer anger on his face. No more confusion, no desire for revenge. What remained was the expression of someone who had been forced deep inside himself, and once there, had to confront truths he had long avoided. The police had informed him that the woman's name was likely fake. All signs pointed to her being part of a crew specializing in extorting famous, lonely, and vulnerable men. By that morning, she was probably in another state, far beyond the reach of local authorities. Nothing was recovered. Not the money, not the watch, not the gold ring filled with memories of his youth with Cuz D'Amato. That loss stung more than anything material. But strangely, Tyson didn't feel defeated. The night before, he had come close to crossing a line, the thin line between reacting like the man he once was, driven by rage, impulsiveness, and self-destruction, or the man he'd been fighting to become over the last few years, calm, clear-headed, in control of himself. And in that moment he realized, that fight he had won. That morning, Tyson had breakfast slowly. He ignored the news, didn't answer messages or interview requests. He didn't want to turn the event into a spectacle. Not this time. Instead, he picked up a small notepad and began to write, something he often did since working on his mental health. At the top of the page, he wrote, "Things she took. My Rolex watch. My Cuz D'Amato ring. My wallet. A piece of my pride. The illusion that I could still judge who deserves my trust." He paused for a moment, looked at the list, and underneath, in bigger letters, he wrote, "Things she couldn't take. My peace. My recovery. My essence. My choice not to retaliate. My evolution." When he finished writing, he smiled. That afternoon, Tyson went to the boxing gym where he trained underprivileged kids in the city. He dressed simply, like anyone else. The boys waited for him as usual, eyes shining in the presence of their hero, unaware of what he'd gone through the night before. "Today I want to talk to you about defeat," he said, voice steady. "But not the kind where you go down from a punch. The kind no one sees. The kind only you feel. The defeat of trusting the wrong person. The defeat of feeling stupid, fooled. And the choice you have after that, to become worse or to learn from it." The boys listened in silence. He didn't speak like a legend. He spoke like a human. "Yesterday, I lost a few things. But today, I gained something I didn't even know I was looking for, peace. And believe me, peace is the hardest belt to win." Days later, when the media had drained the story dry and the scandal cooled, Tyson refused every interview. No statements, no outbursts. Just silence. A powerful silence. Because sometimes, the greatest response isn't a punch, but the absence of one. Life went on. But that night never left him. Not because of the loss or the trap, but because of how he resisted his former self and chose something new. And as for Lisa, or whatever her real name was, she vanished into the world. Maybe she ran the same con again, maybe not. But one thing is certain, that night, she thought she had fooled just a man. She didn't know that behind the giant was a soul under reconstruction. She stole belongings, but left a lesson. And Mike Tyson, the man, not the fighter, understood that some quiet defeats are worth more than all the victories screamed from inside the ring.